Barefoot dreams. Mikey shuddered, drawing his threadbare jacket tighter against the wind's sharp teeth. It snaked through the narrow passage beside the Colosseum, a grim blend of spilled lager and exhaust. His exposed toes throbbed on the unforgiving concrete, each pulse a tiny ache. Common sense urged him home, yet the siren call of the spectacle held him captive. A river of vibrant humanity surged toward the arena's maw, their joyous shouts a painful counterpoint to the drab silence of Mikey's existence. Tonight the Rumble in Rome promised legends, celebrities and power brokers. Everyone, it seemed, save for him. He edged closer to the barriers, hoping for a glimpse of the arriving limousines. Camera flashes exploded, briefly illuminating glimpses of sable and diamonds. In his mind's eye, he envisioned himself emerging from such a car, the masses chanting his name. Mikey, Barefoot Malone. The name resonated. A sudden roar from the crowd announced a familiar, unsavory presence. Angelo Bruno, the neighborhood's shadowy overlord, acknowledged the adulation with a wave, a fat cigar jutting from his lips. Mikey instinctively lowered his head, suddenly vulnerable. Encounters with Bruno, always flanked by stony-faced giants, were best avoided. He retreated further into the alley's gloom, seeking anonymity. Needing to stir life back into his frozen feet, he found a relatively clear space and began to mimic Ali's signature moves, absorbed from countless hours of television. A flicker of a jab, a stinging cross. The grace of a butterfly, the torment of a bee. He attempted to copy Ali's fluid footwork, but his own movements felt clumsy, lacking the legendary boxer's power and finesse. Still, in his imagination, he was Ali, dancing beneath the bright lights, the crowd a wave of ecstatic sound. The usual suspects, a pack of older boys who haunted the corner store, swaggered into the alley. Leading the way was Tony, Knuckles, Esposito, a name synonymous with petty cruelty. Mikey's breath itched, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He knew the script. "Look who it is, Barefoot Malone, dancing for pennies," Tony drawled, his voice laced with mockery. The others erupted in laughter. Shame burned in Mikey's cheeks as he dropped his guard. He yearned to disappear, to simply vanish into the shadows. The nickname, Barefoot, was a brand, a constant reminder of his family's hardship. "Trying to be like Ollie, are we, Mikey?" Tony closed the distance, his eyes gleaming with a predatory light. "You ain't got the shoes, the gloves, or the grit." Mikey remained mute, his fists clenched tight. Experience had taught him the futility of argument, how it only escalated the abuse. Tony shoved him, a sharp jolt that sent him stumbling backward. "Stick to polishing shoes, Barefoot. That's all you'll ever be good for." Their laughter followed them as they moved further down the alley, leaving Mikey alone in the biting cold. He brushed the grime from his jacket, his eyes prickling with unshed tears. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. He wouldn't break. He gazed up at the brightly illuminated arena, its distant roar like the rumble of a coming storm. He might lack the shoes, the gloves, the opportunities afforded to others. But he possessed something they couldn't touch, a dream. A barefoot dream of transcending his circumstances. He resumed his shadowboxing, his movements imbued with a newfound resolve. He was still chilled, still hungry, still utterly alone. Yet, within him, a tiny ember of hope had been rekindled. He would keep practicing. He would keep dreaming. He would prove them all wrong. A gift from the greatest. The roar from inside the arena was a living thing, a beast Mikey could feel vibrating in his chest. He stood pressed against the cold metal barricade, the chain biting into his bare arms. His toes, numb against the grimy pavement, didn't register the occasional stray cigarette but that skittered past. All his attention was focused on the entrance, a gaping maw spewing forth a river of silk shirts, wide smiles, and the intoxicating scent of expensive cologne. He wasn't supposed to be here. Ma would tan his hide if she knew he'd skipped out on helping her with the laundry. But tonight the fight, the energy, it was a magnet, pulling him with irresistible force. He'd have to face the consequences later. Then, he saw him. Muhammad Ali. He emerged from the arena entrance, a whirlwind of charisma even from this distance. The crowd surged, a collective gasp escaping their lips as flashbulbs exploded like miniature lightning strikes. Ollie, ever the showman, soaked it in, his smile radiating pure joy. He moved with a grace that defied his size, a dancer in a world of brawlers. Mikey, usually so eager to disappear into the background, found himself rooted to the spot. He was just another kid, lost in the throng, but for the first time, he didn't care. He just wanted to witness greatness. Ollie's eyes scanned the crowd, a deliberate performance, yet Mikey felt a jolt of recognition as those eyes lingered on him for a fleeting moment. Impossible. Why would Ollie look at him? A skinny kid with dirt clinging to his ankles. Then, impossibly, Ollie began to move towards him. The crowd parted as if Moses himself had cleaved the Red Sea. Mikey's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum solo. He could feel the heat radiating off Ollie as he approached, the sheer force of his presence almost overwhelming. Ollie stopped directly in front of him, the noise of the crowd fading into a dull hum. He knelt, his knees cracking slightly, bringing himself level with Mikey's wide, awestruck gaze. "Little man," Ollie said, his voice a low rumble, "you look like you could use these more than I do right now." Mikey couldn't speak. He just stared, mesmerized, at the boxing shoes Ollie held out. They were worn, scuffed, but unmistakably Ollie's. The leather smelled of sweat and liniment, a potent aroma that spoke of dedication and triumph. "Go on," Ollie urged, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Take 'em. They got a little magic left in 'em. Maybe they'll help you find your own greatness." He carefully unlaced the shoes, his big hands surprisingly nimble, and began to slip them onto Mikey's cold, dirty feet. The leather was warm, a comforting contrast to the biting wind. As Ollie tied the laces, he looked up, his eyes meeting Mikey's. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do, kid. You hear?" A photographer, unnoticed until now, snapped a picture. The flash momentarily blinded Mikey, etching the moment into his memory with searing clarity. Ollie stood, clapping Mikey on the shoulder. "Now get out of here and make something of yourself." He winked, then turned and rejoined the throng, leaving Mikey standing there, speechless, in Ollie's boxing shoes. The shoes of hope. Mikey Barefoot Malone walked home in a daze, the supple leather of the boxing shoes molding to his feet like a second skin. Each step felt lighter than air, a stark contrast to the usual ache of cobblestones against his bare soles. He clutched the crumpled newspaper clipping in his pocket, the grainy image of Ollie kneeling before him a tangible anchor to the unbelievable reality. The air, usually biting in late autumn, felt almost balmy, warmed by an internal fire he couldn't quite explain. He could still smell the faint scent of liniment and sweat clinging to the shoes, a scent that spoke of dedication, of hours spent honing a craft, of a legend in the making. He imagined Ollie's powerful legs driving him across the ring, the thunderous roar of the crowd, the glint of sweat under the bright lights. For the first time, Mikey allowed himself to dream, not of escaping the cold or finding scraps of food, but of something more. Something bigger than himself. His mother was scrubbing clothes in a tin tub when he arrived, her face etched with weariness. She paused, wiping her brow with a calloused hand, and her eyes widened as she took in the sight of Mikey's feet. He stood awkwardly, unsure how to explain. Where did you get those, Mikey?" she asked, her voice a mixture of surprise and suspicion. He fumbled with the newspaper clipping, handing it to her. She read the short article slowly, her lips moving silently as she deciphered the words. When she looked up, her eyes were glistening. "Muhammad Ali gave you his shoes?" she whispered, tracing the outline of Ollie's face in the photograph with a trembling finger. "He's a good man, Mikey. A very good man." A rare smile touched her lips, chasing away the usual lines of worry. She pulled him into a hug, a fierce, protective embrace that spoke volumes. That night Mikey slept with the shoes tucked under his threadbare blanket, a shield against the cold and the taunts he knew would inevitably come. The next morning, the taunts did come, but they were different. There was an undercurrent of awe mixed with the usual derision. "Look at Barefoot Malone, thinks he's gonna be the next champ. Jimmy O'Malley sneered, but his eyes flickered with a hint of envy. Then the news broke. Not just in the local paper, but on the evening news. A blurry clip showed Ali leaving the arena, followed by a still photo of the shoe-giving incident. The commentators spoke of Ali's generosity, of his connection with the common man, and of the anonymous boy who had captured the champion's attention. Mikey Malone, the boy who was always overlooked, suddenly became a local sensation. His teacher, Mrs. Higgins, treated him with a newfound respect. Other students, the ones who used to avoid him in the hallways, now offered hesitant smiles. Even Mr. Henderson, the gruff owner of the local bakery, gave him an extra roll with his meager lunch. The attention was overwhelming, a dizzying whirlwind of flashbulbs and whispered questions. But amidst the chaos, Mikey held onto the shoes, the tangible proof that even in the darkest corners of the world, hope could find a foothold. He knew the shoes wouldn't magically transform him into a boxing champion, but they represented something far more valuable, the belief that even a barefoot boy could dream and be in the ring. The pavement hummed under Mikey's bare toes, the familiar sting oddly comforting after the luxurious warmth of Ali's shoes. He cradled the precious leather bundle in his arms, the scent of sweat and something indefinably Ali filling his nostrils. He felt lighter, almost buoyant, despite the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. It wasn't just the shoes, it was the feeling of being seen, of being chosen. He was halfway down Elm Street when he heard the taunting whistle. Reggie Thompson, all puffed-up chest and gleaming teeth, stood blocking the sidewalk, flanked by his usual entourage of sycophants. Reggie, nicknamed the Flash for his frustrating ability to flit around the boxing ring, always looked like he just stepped out of a magazine ad. Well, Reggie drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. If it isn't Barefoot Malone. Find something to pawn today? Mikey stopped, his grip tightening on the shoes. Just trying to get home, Reggie. Reggie smirked. What's that you got there? Looks like shoes. Real fancy ones? Did your mommy finally break down and buy you something that doesn't smell of the dumpster? The laughter of Reggie's friends stung more than the words. Mikey flushed, his jaw tight. These are special. Reggie stepped closer, his eyes glinting with a nasty curiosity. He reached out, attempting to snatch the shoes, but Mikey jerked back. Whoa there, Malone. Don't want to get all high and mighty just because you found some old cast-offs. Probably belonged to somebody's grandpa. He feigned a gag. Bet they smell like mothballs and Bengay. They're not cast-offs, Mikey retorted, his voice trembling slightly. They were given to me. Given? By who? The garbage man? Reggie's laughter intensified. He took another step, crowding Mikey. Let me see those things. I bet they're even too big for your clown feet. Mikey knew he was outnumbered. He could try to run, but they'd just chase him down. He balled his free hand into a fist, the knuckles white. Leave me alone, Reggie. Or what, Barefoot? You gonna hit me with your fancy hand-me-downs? Reggie pushed him, the force sending Mikey stumbling back against the brick wall of O'Malley's butcher shop. The aroma of sawdust and raw meat filled his nostrils, a stark contrast to the leathery scent of the boxing shoes. Just leave him alone, Reggie. A voice piped up from the back of the group. It was Billy, a skinny kid with freckles who usually just echoed whatever Reggie said. Reggie glared at Billy, silencing him with a single look. Then he turned back to Mikey, his face hardening. You think you're something special now, Malone? Just because you got some old shoes? You're still nothing. Your dad's nothing. You'll always be nothing. The words hit Mikey harder than any punch. He looked down at the shoes in his arms, the sudden weight of them almost unbearable. The hope that had bloomed just moments ago withered under the heat of Reggie's envy. He wanted to believe in the shoes, to believe in the promise Ali had unknowingly made, but Reggie's words echoed the doubts that always lurked in the back of his mind. Harold Shadow. The speed bag blurred under Reggie's fists, a frantic drumbeat echoing in the cavernous gym. Sweat plastered his dark hair to his forehead, each beat a tiny mirror reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights above. He moved with practiced ease, his feet light, his punches a rhythmic dance. Harold, a looming figure in the corner, watched with narrowed eyes. The air hung thick with the scent of leather, stale sweat, and liniment. "Faster, Reggie! Faster!" Harold's voice, a low growl, cut through the rhythmic thud of the bag. "You're moving like you're wading through molasses. This isn't a tea party." Reggie gritted his teeth, pushing harder. He was already at his limit, his muscles screaming in protest, but Harold's disapproval was a sharper pain. He picked up the pace, the speed bag a furious blur, a tangible representation of the pressure building inside him. "Good," Harold conceded, a rare morsel of praise. "Now footwork. Remember what I told you. Float like a butterfly." Reggie spun away from the speed bag, transitioning to footwork drills. He circled an imaginary opponent, bouncing on the balls of his feet, mimicking the grace and agility of his idol, Muhammad Ali. He threw jabs, crosses, hooks, each punch snapping with precision. Harold remained impassive. "You're telegraphing your punches, Reggie." A blind man could see them coming. "Keep your elbows tucked in, protect your ribs." Reggie stopped, his chest heaving. "Dad, I'm trying my best." "Trying isn't good enough, Reggie. You have the talent, the pedigree. Don't waste it. The Thompsons don't settle for second best." Harold's words were like jabs, each one landing with calculated precision. The Thompson pedigree. Reggie hated that phrase. It was a constant reminder of the weight on his shoulders, the expectations he was expected to meet. His grandfather, a legendary heavyweight. His father, a contender cut short by a career-ending injury. Now, it was his turn. "Sometimes," Reggie said, wiping sweat from his brow, "I wish I wasn't a Thompson." Harold's face hardened. "Don't you ever say that. You're lucky to have the blood of champions flowing through your veins. Don't dishonor it." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over Reggie. "This isn't about what you want, Reggie. It's about what you're meant to do. You're meant to be a champion. And I'm going to make sure you get there, whether you like it or not." Reggie met his father's gaze, a mixture of resentment and resignation swirling within him. He knew arguing was futile. Harold was a force of nature, an immovable object. He was trapped in his father's shadow, destined to follow the path that had been laid out for him, whether he wanted to or not. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, Dad. What's next?" Harold's expression softened, a flicker of something that might have been pride in his eyes. "Sparring. I want you to work on your defense. And remember what I said about telegraphing your punches. A tournament of dreams." The walk home felt different. It wasn't just the weight of the shoes in his worn knapsack, but the weight of Ali's words, echoing in his mind. "These'll take you far, champ." Mikey Barefoot Malone, champ? The idea was laughable, yet a seed of hope, stubbornly refusing to be trampled, had been planted. A faded poster stapled to a lamppost caught his eye. "The Emerald Gloves Tournament. Local boxers, big dreams." Below that, a list of weight divisions and entry details. Mikey stopped, his breath catching in his throat. He wasn't a boxer. He'd never even been in a real fight. But Ali had given him his shoes. And Ali believed in him. He signed up the next day, scrawling his name on the entry form with a hand that trembled only slightly. The man behind the desk, a burly figure with a cauliflower ear, barely glanced up. "Lightweight, huh? You got any experience, kid?" Mikey swallowed. "Not much," the man grunted. "Tournament starts next week. Be ready to get knocked around." The gym reeked of sweat, leather, and liniment. It was a cacophony of grunts, the thud of gloves on heavy bags, and the rhythmic snap of jump ropes. Mikey felt utterly out of place. He found a quiet corner and laced up Ali's shoes. The leather felt strangely warm, familiar. He remembered Ali's words again, not just the encouragement, but the stories he'd heard, the training montages he'd watched on his beat-up TV. He started with simple shadow boxing, mimicking the jabs and crosses he'd seen in films. His movements were clumsy, uncoordinated. His arms ached after only a few minutes. He moved to the heavy bag, throwing tentative punches. Each blow felt weak, pathetic. He imagined the bag was his fear, his self-doubt, everything that held him back. He punched harder, grunting with effort. Still, the bag barely moved. Days blurred into a cycle of aching muscles, bruised knuckles, and gasping breaths. He ran until his lungs burned, skipped rope until his ankles screamed, and punched the heavy bag until his hands were raw. He remembered Ali's relentless training regimen, the dedication it took to be the greatest. He wasn't the greatest, not even close, but he could try. One evening, slumped against the ropes, his body screaming for rest, he heard a voice. "You're telegraphing your punches, kid. Your stance is all wrong." It was the man from the entry desk, his cauliflower ear gleaming in the dim light. "And you're fighting like you're afraid to get hit." Mikey looked up, defeated. "I am afraid." The man chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But you gotta learn to use it. Come on, let's work on that jab." The Flash versus Barefoot. The bracket hung above the ring like a judge's gavel, impartial and unforgiving. Mikey traced his finger down the paper, past names he vaguely recognized, until it landed on his next opponent, Reggie. The Flash. Thompson. A collective murmur rippled through the training gym. Even old Sal, perched on his stool like a grizzled owl, whistled low. Mikey's stomach clenched. He'd known, logically, that he'd have to face Reggie eventually. But seeing it in stark black and white made it undeniably real. He glanced at his calloused feet, bare against the worn canvas. Reggie, with his custom-made boots and designer mouthpiece, was everything Mikey wasn't. The day of the fight dawned with a nervous energy that buzzed through the city. Backstage, the air crackled with the scent of liniment and sweat. Mikey bounced on the balls of his feet, trying to loosen the knots in his shoulders. Sal wrapped his hands with practiced efficiency, his silence more comforting than any pep talk. Across the hall, the atmosphere in Reggie's dressing room was different. Harold Thompson paced like a caged tiger, his words clipped and sharp. "This isn't some playground brawl, Reggie! This kid's a nobody. You dismantle him. Round 1. Make it decisive." Reggie, usually brimming with cocky swagger, looked pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. He mumbled, "Yes, Dad." Harold grabbed his son's chin, his grip surprisingly tight. "No hesitation. No mercy. He's just an obstacle. Understand?" Reggie flinched, but nodded, the fear in his eyes momentarily eclipsing the arrogance. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Mikey walked towards the ring. He caught a glimpse of Mrs. Rodriguez, her face etched with worry, but her wave was full of encouragement. He focused on that, on the silent promise he'd made to her, to himself. Reggie was already in the ring, bouncing lightly on his toes, his eyes burning with a strange mix of anger and apprehension. The Flash, primed to strike. The bell rang. Reggie shot across the ring, a blur of motion. Mikey instinctively ducked, the wind from Reggie's jab ruffling his hair. He felt a sting on his cheek. The Flash was living up to his name. Mikey circled, his bare feet padding softly on the canvas, absorbing the shock of each movement. He needed to slow Reggie down, to find an opening in that whirlwind of fists. He remembered Sal's words. "They can't hurt what they can't hit." The crowd was a roaring ocean, voices blurring into a single, overwhelming sound. But Mikey only heard the rhythmic thump of his own heart, the whisper of his breath, and the urgent scrape of Reggie's shoes against the canvas. This wasn't just a fight, it was a test. A reckoning. Channeling the champ? The bell's clang propelled Reggie from his corner, a swift, kinetic force. Mikey, gloves emitting the fresh scent of new leather mingled with trepidation, found himself immediately pressured. Reggie's jab snapped, each impact against Mikey's raised arms a jarring echo. The crowd's roar crashed around him, yet Mikey perceived only the relentless tattoo of Reggie's assault. A right hook, honed during training with Mr. O'Malley, met only air as Reggie sidestepped with a mocking laugh. "That all you've got, Barefoot? Thought you had some fire!" The coppery tang of blood filled Mikey's mouth as he retreated, the arena lights blurring into a disorienting haze. Reggie epitomized everything he lacked: assurance, finesse, and effortless grace. Insecurity, a creeping chill, constricted his gut. He was outgunned. Defeat loomed. Another barrage slammed into his ribs, expelling his air. He glimpsed Mr. O'Malley's anxious face amongst the spectators, unable to hold his gaze. He was failing him. He was failing everyone. Then, a sudden clarity pierced through the pain. Not the sting of Reggie's blows, but the remembered texture of aged leather, the significance of a heartfelt gift. He recalled Mr. O'Malley's tales of Muhammad Ali, more than just a fighter, a beacon of compassion and unshakable faith. He remembered the symbolic shoes, the phantom footwear representing opportunity, potential. He envisioned Ali, kneeling in the chill, extending warmth and belief. "These'll take you far, champ." The words resonated, a crucial anchor in the swirling chaos. Something within Mikey hardened. Fear lingered, but its grip loosened, replaced by a nascent defiance. He wasn't just battling for himself. He fought for the wide-eyed boy who had dreamt of this moment, for Mr. O'Malley's steadfast trust, for the chance to prove that grit outweighed pedigree. Lowering his guard slightly, he dared Reggie to engage. This time, the blows weren't merely absorbed. He swayed, slipped, using Reggie's aggressive drive against him. A glancing blow stung his cheek, but instead of faltering, he closed the distance, inhaling the sharp scent of Reggie's expensive cologne. A compact jab drove into Reggie's flank, eliciting a surprised grunt. Reggie stumbled back, disbelief twisting his features. "What was that?" Mikey offered no reply. He surged forward, his punches raw, unrefined, fueled by an unleashed, visceral power. He wasn't trying to outmaneuver Reggie, but to outwill him. The ache in his muscles, the stinging sweat, became secondary, overridden by a deeper, more potent fuel. The crowd, sensing the shift in the tide, thundered its approval, an engulfing wave of encouragement. He registered Reggie's father, apoplectic, railing from the edge of the ring, his tirade lost in the cacophony. Reggie, normally so self-assured, appeared unsettled, doubt shadowing his eyes. Mikey seized the moment, unleashing a wild, looping haymaker. It lacked grace, but it connected, landing squarely on Reggie's jaw. Reggie reeled, his gaze unfocused. Mikey knew this was it. He wouldn't let it pass. A legacy of kindness. The bell chimed, a high, clear note cutting through the roaring crowd. Mikey danced back, sweat stinging his eyes, but a grin stretched across his face. Reggie, usually a whirlwind of jabs and hooks, was breathing heavily, his movements sluggish. The relentless pressure, the constant dodging and weaving, had taken its toll. Mikey had weathered the storm. He remembered Ali's words, echoing in his mind, a beacon in the blinding lights of the arena. "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." He wasn't floating exactly, more like stumbling with grace, but he was stinging. He saw an opening, Reggie's guard momentarily down, and he lunged. A right hook, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, connected with Reggie's jaw. Reggie staggered, his eyes glazed. The crowd gasped. Mikey pressed his advantage, a flurry of punches landing, each one a testament to his grueling training, to Ali's belief, to his own unwavering spirit. The referee jumped in, waving his arms, his face a mask of concern. "He's out! He's out!" Silence, then an explosion of sound. The crowd erupted, a tidal wave of cheers and applause washing over Mikey. He raised his arms, a hesitant champion, disbelief warring with triumph in his heart. He had won. Barefoot Mikey Malone, the underdog, the kid with the borrowed shoes, had won the Emerald Gloves tournament. Later, the din of the arena faded into a quiet hum as Mikey stood alone in his small apartment. He carefully placed Ali's worn boxing shoes into a custom-built glass case, the soft glow of the interior lights illuminating the scuffs and creases that told a silent story of dedication and dreams. He polished the glass until it gleamed, a mirror reflecting his own journey. These weren't just shoes, they were a symbol, a reminder that kindness and belief could overcome any obstacle. Years passed. Mikey, no longer barefoot but a respected coach and mentor, stood in his own boxing gym, a sanctuary filled with the rhythmic thump of gloves against punching bags and the hopeful chatter of young fighters. The glass case stood prominently near the entrance, a silent inspiration. One afternoon, a familiar figure walked into the gym. Reggie Thompson, older now, his face etched with a quiet humility Mikey hadn't seen before. "Mikey," Reggie said, his voice low. "Heard you were doing good things here." Mikey nodded, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Trying to give back." Reggie looked at the glass case, his gaze lingering on the worn leather. "Those shoes, they changed things for you, didn't they?" "They did," Mikey confirmed. "They showed me what's possible." Reggie extended his hand, his grip firm. "You deserve that win, Mikey. I was a jerk back then. My old man, he pushed me too hard." He paused, a flicker of the old arrogance surfacing, then quickly fading. "I see now what real strength is. It's not about money or privilege. It's about heart." Mikey clasped Reggie's hand. A silent understanding passed between them, a shared acknowledgement of the journey they had both traveled. It wasn't an apology, but something more profound, respect. The legacy of kindness, it seemed, could build bridges even across the deepest divides.